Paul, where do you think this will all end for the British people? Do you regret leaving the UK to live in Spain? What does your family think of your activism? Who is your favourite YouTuber in this space? Have you had any serious threats to your safety? Gonna be honest with you, mate, you talk a lot of sense, but you look and sound like a bit of a South London villain. What's the score with you? Do you have any future political ambitions? Paul, what are you trying to achieve here? All questions that I'm going to answer for you, my viewers, today. Welcome back, everyone. So I haven't done one of these for quite a long time, to be fair, and I thought it's about time that I did. I've got a few questions here from you, the viewers, that I've picked out to answer this afternoon. I've got to apologise and say that I haven't actually written down the names, which is typical of me, always unorganised, but I think there are a good set of questions that you're going to find interesting to hear the answers. And the first one is, Paul, where do you think this will all end for the British people? It's a very tough question to answer, isn't it? Because the situation we are in at home probably is unique for us British people. We have not experienced the issues that we're clearly having ever in our lifetime, certainly not in my lifetime. We've never known a period in our history where the indigenous people of the country are really being seen in many respects, or at least they feel like second-class citizens. Where will it all end? Well, God only knows. I can only hope that it ends peacefully. I've said before, I've gone on record as saying before, I have my grave doubts that can happen. I think we're heading towards a situation that nobody wants to see, although I suppose there are some people out there that would be happy to see bloodshed, but I'm certainly not one of those people. I believe in George Orr, not war. But if we're not careful, it's not going to end well. And there are a multitude of reasons why we are heading down this dark path that we've been heading, mostly due to the British people's apathy, I think. You know, they've just sat back and thought, oh, well, it doesn't affect me yet. When it does, maybe I'll have something to say. And I think what we're seeing is, as time goes by, more and more people who never thought that the issues that we have right now would affect them, all of a sudden, they are affecting them. All of a sudden, people in areas that they never thought would be affected are now suddenly afraid to send their kids to school. That's now affecting them. Their pocket is being hit by higher taxes. It's tough now to make ends meet in the UK, isn't it? And not only just to make ends meet, but to pay the bills and, God forbid, have a little bit of enjoyment in your life after it's all done. Where will it end? Well, I sincerely hope that will ultimately end in victory for the British people, like it usually does. The British are not easily defeated people, are we? But I think we've got a long, hard, tough struggle in front of us, and that struggle for me has always been and will always remain a strictly political battle. We are our own worst enemy. Anyone watching this right now, if you're angry about the things that are going on and you're not registered to vote, or you don't bother to vote, you're part of the problem, not part of the solution. The only way that we can find our way out of this mess is by getting rid of the people that are in power, that have been voted for by a small minority of people in this country. The vast majority need to rise at the ballot box and make sure these people are gone, and gone for good. That's the only way. Now, you all know that not only have I joined, but I'm also on the College of Advance UK. I have strong political beliefs. I believe they are best aligned with Ben Habib and Advance UK, and I will continue to campaign for that political party. Who knows when the next general election is, but whenever that general election comes along, we will all have to evaluate the situation. Many of us might have to vote tactically, but what we must do at the next general election is unite as a nation to make sure we eliminate, when I say eliminate, I mean politically eliminate the Labour Party and all those on the hard left of politics. And look, these people have a right to their beliefs. I do not hate these people. I know many of you probably will, but I find having hatred in your heart a bit of a waste of an emotion. I learned a long time ago that people that spend time hating other people usually have pretty bad lives themselves, and the reason is because they spend all their positive energy being negative about someone else when they're much better off using that positive energy that they have or that they can muster for the day on focusing on themselves, their own lives and their own families. That's a much better way of spending your energy. So, going back again, I digress a little bit, but going back again to the question, where will it all end for the British people? Well, I think it will ultimately end well, but make no mistake, we have a monumental, unprecedented task in front of us that, as a British people, we must rise to. The next one is, do you regret leaving the UK to live in Spain? That's a really tough question. I've been through this quite a bit, but there is a little bit more to it than I've told you before, and let me tell you all about that. I mean, we've been coming here for 20 odd years, me and my wife. We love this area, we love the way of life, we love the relaxed atmosphere, the ambience, the people are lovely. You're never short of a British voice. There's probably more Brits here than there are in Brighton. So we've been coming here for 20 years, and during that time, I suppose, going back as far as about 10 years ago, we did start to talk about maybe one day in our retirement coming to live here full time. If I'm honest, I guess in many ways that was a little bit of not a pipe dream, but it's one of them things that you often talk about with your partner, deep down probably knowing inside that it's never really going to happen. But it's nice to talk about it, right? The journey's better than the arrival and all that stuff. You've probably all done it. You've all been on holiday and you've gone, oh, I wouldn't mind living here. You know what it's like. As the years have progressed, we fell more and more in love with the area, and then at the end of last year, my youngest daughter, her partner and one of my grandchildren decided to move out here full time. That was a game changer for us as a family. Obviously we all are aware of what's going on at home. They left the UK because they no longer felt safe sending my daughter to the school that she was going to, a school that was rampant with left-wing views, left-wing teachers, and views and opinions that we just don't hold up with. Yes, they could have moved school, could have moved house, but the harsh reality of it is the financial restrictions back home upon them were unbearable. My son-in-law tried to start up a business. The poor fella couldn't even open a goddamn bank account. Couldn't even open a bank account to try and get his business started. And it was at that point they just gave up and said, Dad, we're going to Spain. So off they went. My other daughter at the time was talking about potentially moving to Abu Dhabi with her partner, where there was a potential job on offer. Thankfully that didn't come about. I wasn't keen on that move, I've got to be honest with you. But it's then that we started to more seriously consider moving out here full time. Again, in all honesty, the possibility was fairly remote. I had no real plans to actually move out within the next year or two. I wanted to continue with the battle at home, the political battle at home before we left. I wanted to leave the UK in a better place than it is. That was the plan. But events caught up with us. They started to play around with my own bank accounts, closing bank accounts. I was being pulled up by the police. I think it was 6 times in the last 3 months. Not far from where I live or in Brighton, I was pulled up by the police who had no real reason or gave me no real reasons, valid reasons as to why I was being stopped. They weren't aggressive towards me or impolite. In fact, they were mostly very polite. And as human beings, you know, like, I couldn't fault them. They were polite, friendly, but there was clearly something going on, clearly. And on top of that, every time I came home from Spain, we used to visit on a regular basis. Long before I was talking about politics, we were out here 3, 4, 5 times a year. And on the last 3 occasions that I returned home from Spain back to Gatwick, I was held at border control, put in a holding pen, and I could feel that something was brewing up. And probably the very last straw was when female members of my family were spat upon and abused in the street in Brighton. And I just thought, you know what, enough's enough. I'm going to head off to Spain with my youngest daughter, and we'll see how it goes, you know. And ultimately now the intention really is to stay here until this Labour government have gone. Hopefully that's sooner rather than later. I mean, look, will we come back if Labour were gone tomorrow? I'm not, honestly, if I'm honest with my viewers, and I really like to be honest with you, I'm not sure. I mean, yes, I would certainly be back on a more regular basis. I'd be coming home probably every 2 or 3 weeks. Whereas at the moment, I haven't been home since April. Would we move back to the UK full time? For the safety of the female members of my family, I would have to say no, not until a lot of changes have been made. But I would certainly be travelling back a lot more regularly to do what I do. Next question, Paul, what does your family think of your activism? Well, having just said what I've said, you can probably guess. I don't actually class myself as an activist. I'm just an ordinary granddad that talks about politics, current affairs, state of our country. I'm not an activist. I consider myself just a commentator, really. But as you might imagine, they get very concerned about my safety. They would like to see me pack it all in. But I've explained to them that, look, particularly to my girls, you know, I've said, look, girls, you grew up with me. You know that I've never, ever once allowed you to take on a battle or a problem or a fight that I couldn't take on for you and deal with on your behalf. And this is the biggest battle of all that you face, and my beautiful grandchildren. So, no, I can't stop, despite the fact that, in all honesty, I'd probably like to. I mean, I could take my top off, grab a beer and go and sit on the beach and forget all about it, but that's not going to achieve anything, is it? Next one, who is your favourite YouTuber in this space? Now that's a real stitch-up question, because I've got a lot of friends, obviously, that are in the YouTube industry and in this space. There are a great many of them. I'm not going to start naming people who I like and think do a good job. I think they all do a good job, all of them. I admire their bravery, their tenacity, their ability to get out and about and do what they do, their courage. I admire their ability to edit a video, make a video. It's not as easy as you think. So I admire them all. And some of my best friends who I admire and respect the most are not actually going to get a mention right now. They are there, they know they are, and they're very important to me as friends. But if you're asking me who's the best at their job, who does what I do and what we do, who does that best, I'd have to say it's a toss-up between Liam Tufts and Dan Wootton, but I'm going to go for Dan Wootton, and I'll tell you why. Because Liam is more of a podcaster. I believe that Liam is the best podcaster right now, probably in the world. But Dan is different. Dan brings you the news, the views, the current affairs. He gives, alongside that, he gives you his views. He brings you magnificent guests. And he brings professionalism. He brings credibility. So I'd have to say that Dan is probably, you know, the leading light, as it were, in this particular space, and all credit to him. He does a wonderful job, and he's also a very, very brave individual. Next question is, have you had any serious threats to your safety? Well, I've kind of gone through that in the question about what does my family think about what I do. But of course, we all get death threats. I mean, I think I'm on about 130 as it stands, something like that. The vast majority of them I just chuck in the bin. I don't even read a lot of them. You read the first paragraph and then you just delete it. It goes with the territory. I think the biggest danger is probably when you're out and about at events. And I'm very lucky to have a group of lads, a little group of friends that take care of me and my security when I go out on any events. And I trust them implicitly, I trust them with my life. And there have been occasions when I have felt under threat, one or two times in particular that we've been out at events, and people have definitely had their eye on me. But as I say, thanks to the safety offered by the security lads, they've always kept me safe. And a big shout out to John, Jamie, Craig, Bill, there's Colin and other lads that have been there with me, Ben. You know, if I've missed anyone, I'm sorry, but you know, these lads look after me to the nth degree, and I'm very grateful to them, and so obviously are my family. The next one's an interesting one. Didn't know whether to read this one out, but I thought, sod it, I will. It says, "Gonna be honest with you, mate. You make a lot of sense, but you look and sound like a bit of a South London villain. What's the real score with you?" That's not the first time I've heard that. And I get it. Look, you know, London accent, loads of tattoos, working class lad, working class accent. You're going to get told, right? You're going to get labelled. And I get that, you know, I'm used to it. I don't mind. I mean, it's what I am. It's who I am. Where I grew up in South London in the 1970s, you know, you conformed or you were not part of the group. You weren't part of the gang, as it were. You know, you were bullied or you were deemed as being a wimp, a wally, whatever you want to call it. And part of that was, you know, having tattoos and being a bit of a Jack the Lad, but without ever getting into any trouble. So as far as the accusation, or not the accusation, but the question, I look like a bit of a South London villain, what's the score? I have a completely clean criminal record. When I came here and got my visa to Spain, part of that application is to get an ACRO report. I think it's a subject access report of some kind, which goes off to the authorities, goes off to the police, and they write back to you with a record of your criminal record, and mine is completely clean and clear. And don't forget, I also was a firearms licence holder back in the UK, and anyone that knows about holding a licence for firearms knows that, you know, even a parking ticket can get those taken away. So, look, don't necessarily judge a book by its cover. You look at Keir Starmer, you look at someone like me, you put us side by side. If he was chasing me down the road, the police would jump on me. If I was chasing him down the road, the police would still jump on me. That's the way the class system works in the UK. But like I said, never judge a book by its cover. Do I have any political ambitions? I don't think so. I am on the College of Advanced UK. Ben Habib is a man that I respect immensely. He is one of only a couple of three politicians that I've ever met in my life that I would trust with the future of my children. I can't pay him any more of a compliment than that. Howard Cox is another politician that I would trust with the future of our children. Noel Wilcox is another gentleman that I would trust with the future of our children, although Noel belongs to a different political party. But nonetheless, these are all men with morals, and I like a man and a person with morals. Do I have any political ambitions of myself, for myself? I would say no, but if Ben asked me to do something otherwise, then I would have to seriously consider it. Of course, the battle would always be, and I refer back to the last question, you look like a bit of a South London villain, there's your problem. Last question that I'm going to tackle today is, Paul, what are you trying to achieve here? That's a question that I actually get asked quite a lot. There are a million potential answers to that question, but I'm really going to just settle on one. I grew up, and probably most of you growing up, had a great childhood. My youth was brilliant. My teenage years were brilliant. My early adult life was just amazing in the 1980s. Best times of my life. And I want our children, all of our children, my grandchildren, your grandchildren, I want them to be able to grow up and have the experiences and the freedom and the joy and the fun and experience the love that we experienced, that we were lucky to have. Now, our forefathers that fought in 2 world wars, God bless them, God rest their soul, thank you for their service, and, you know, our lost youngsters from 2 world wars are always on my mind. And they play on my mind a lot. My grandfather was one of them. Thankfully, he did come home, but minus his right arm, age 16. Those people are always on my mind, and what they gave, were prepared to give. And I think where I am part of a very lucky generation, probably the luckiest generation of all. The generations before us grew up either in a war or that they were children of war parents. We were really the first generation that lived in total freedom, without any problems, without any major issues. And that's all I want for our kids, for their futures. None of us that I know in this movement are racist, Islamophobic, or are filled with any hatred or dislike for people that don't look or sound like us. That is not the issue. The issue is culture. The issue is all about freedom. Culture and freedom. We must maintain our culture and therefore retaining our freedom. Without our culture being saved and maintained, we cannot save and maintain our freedoms. And that's basically what I want to achieve. I want to achieve a brighter future for everyone that lives in our country peacefully, happily, that wants to conform. If I'm honest, I'm not that bothered what religion you follow. I'm not at all bothered about what you look like. And I'm not bothered what you do behind closed doors. I don't care if men want to dress as women, if women want to dress as men. None of that's my goddamn business. But what I don't want is things that are out of the ordinary or not regular or not what we would class as being normal to be forced down the throats of our children, of people that don't want things forced down their throats. I don't want to force any of my views down anyone's throats. My views belong to me, and if people share them, that's great. If they don't share them, that's fine. They're perfectly entitled not to share them. What I don't believe is, I don't believe in political violence. I don't believe in mental gaslighting. I don't believe in mental abuse. And I believe that the British people have been mentally abused. I've got a video coming out about that very soon. We have been in an abusive relationship with our government and our leaders for the last 20, 30 years. And that gaslighting and that abuse is getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where people like me, just like people that are in sometimes bad relationships, have to flee their home to get away from that abuse. That's where we're at right now. That's where I'm at. This may look very beautiful, and it is, but it's not my home. It never will be. I'm very grateful to Spain and to the wonderful Spanish people for allowing me to come here and live in peace. I'll be forever grateful to Spain for that. Thank you very much to the Spanish people. But I would like to one day go home in safety, to enjoy my life, to enjoy the rest of my life in the same way in which we all grew up in it. Right guys, I think that's it for today. That was a bit of a waffle. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, don't forget, please subscribe to the channel. That will be really useful. And if you can find your way to hitting that thumbs up, that will be even better. God bless you all. I'll see you soon.